In here for Yellowhammer Now. We've got Yaffe with us. He's a talk show host at WVNN. He also writes for Yellowhammer as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about the state of school choice right now. The legislature is about to go back into session and start getting to work tomorrow. I'm not sure school choice is going to come up this week or ever. But Yaffe, you've wrote some stuff on school choice. You and I have talked about it a lot on the radio together. What is the current state of school choice in Alabama right now?
The current state is, while there are some in the legislature that are trying to pass a real school choice bill, it's called the Price Act. It seems that most in the leadership, and I'm talking the leadership of the Republican Party, they're finding every excuse to go against it. And a lot of the excuses they're making, it's the same excuses I've heard from school choice opponents for years, including Democrats, the AEA. And one of them, of course, they're using the word accountability. Oh, we have to make sure that these schools are accountable, that they're not abusing students and
And
they're
what do they
not.
mean by that? When they say that, they mean something very specific. Tell the people watching this what they mean.
So basically, they're suggesting that if we have an education savings account bill or a voucher bill, that people will start their own private schools or homeschools and they won't teach the kids the right things. The standards in these new private schools will not be good. So we need accountable measures to make sure they're good, which really just means we need more standardized tests and we need to make them more like public schools, just to make sure that they're okay because we can't really trust these parents to make their own decisions.
So, how are those public schools doing with their standardized testing? Is it going well? Because is that the sign of success? The fact that they have standardized testing because they're doing so great. So as long as they test them, they'll be happy. It's almost like they want to take what doesn't work about the public school system and put it on the private school system. Now, I know you talked with former congressional candidate and former Huntsville City School Superintendent Casey Wardynski about this. When he
Mhm.
was the superintendent of the Huntsville City Schools, he was opposed to school choice. But I at least give him somewhat credit for his position that he held at that particular time because his argument was if these guys are going to be given all these opportunities, these private schools, and they don't have to play by a certain set of rules, don't make them do it. Let
Yeah.
me do it. Let me play by the same rules you're going to be putting on them. But the argument against it, and it's so weird to hear this from Republicans right now, because they're making the argument that we've got to take all the things that are happening in the public school and make it happen in the private school as well, which would be fine. But if that was effective, then we wouldn't need school choice and people wouldn't be
Exactly.
complaining about this, right?
Exactly. And there's something else that they're not telling you, but those who are pushing for this bill are actually saying there are already laws in place right now to keep guardrails on private schools and
Sure.
homeschools. The laws already exist. So, this idea that we need more of those, to me, it seems a little bit like a cop out, like they're getting copy points from somewhere.
No, they
I don't
are.
know
You're absolutely
where.
right. There are talking points, and I'll tell you what it is. The talking points go as a little something like this. I talked to the superintendent in my school districts, and they said they're fine with it as long as there are more guardrails. Or I talked to one of the private school headmasters or whatever in my school district, and they said if you put any guardrails on us, we won't accept any of the money. And that's how they're going to try to frame this. They're muddying up the waters
Mhm.
so much that nothing gets done. And I always reference this, and I'm going to keep referencing it until it is proven wrong. It's like gambling, and now it's like the food tax. Everyone says they're in favor of gambling in the state of Alabama, but is it lottery? Is it casino games? What are the Porch Creeks going to do? Should it be every congressional district? Should we just open up the door and say, have at it? Oh, well, there's just too many people in there that we can't come to an agreement on, so I guess we can't do anything. On the food tax, it's should it be SNAP? Should it be WIC? Should it be phased out? Should it be gone forever? Should it be a holiday? Well, golly, I guess we just can't do anything. And in this particular case, we're basically heading down the same path where there's 27 different ideas, so let's not do any of them. Is that what we're looking at?
Yes. And you make a really good point about the grocery tax, by the way, because I'm hearing those same things. Like a week ago, we were like, oh man, this might actually happen for once. Maybe they'll actually pass a cut. Seems like that's already starting to go away because of everything you just mentioned. But here's the same thing, it's the same excuses. And to me, it just seems like they just don't want it and they're finding a way not to have it. And by the way, there's another point on school choice. I had a friend of mine tell me, well, what we should do is focus on fixing the public schools. Oh, you mean like we've been trying to focus on
Yeah.
that for how many years and it hasn't worked? Maybe we need a systemic change in order to have real accountability for public schools, more competition, and fix it that way. It's going to take a generation to fix problems in government and public schools. My kid will be grown up by then. I would rather have more options now.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. What a brilliant guy your friend is. So we should fix the public schools. Okay, well, I don't know why we didn't think about that before. Now we'll actually work on fixing those public schools. These folks act like the schools will be depleted in both bodies and money if this passes. They know it's not true. They know it's not true. They have the data from the other states that show it. They know all of this stuff. The thing that surprised me, and the thing that showed me that the current state of school choice in this Alabama is unlikely, would be my answer to the question, is because we're not hearing from the AEA screeching. They haven't put their goons on buses and bust them down to the Capitol to scream and yell and do all this stuff. Maybe create a Tennessee 3 situation at the Capitol over school choice or something.
Oh,
They
don't give
haven't
them
gotten
any
into
ideas.
that mode. Hey, listen, Yavi, I tell you what, they've done it before. They've done it
Mm.
before. Teachers will all call in sick, and they'll go down to the legislature, and they'll screech, and they'll yell, and they'll do all these things. And they will do it maybe not over school choice, but over funding or
Yeah.
whatever.
More of
It
a
was
reason to have school choice, it sounds like.
no, exactly right. I mean, there is the Alabama Accountability Act, obviously, is in play, and what that says is, hey, if your school really sucks, then you can get out of that school. If your school really sucks, you can go to a different school. We'll give you some money for that. All this would do is the ideas that we're hearing is broaden that opportunity in a different way. And the Price Act is interesting. But I said to you, there's no screeching from the AEA types. And I ask legislators every time I talk to them, Yaffee, I say to them, I say, hey, are you hearing from the AEA people? And they say, no, we're not hearing anything. But I've started to hear this whole, no, it's not the AEA that opposes it. It's not only the AEA that opposes it. And I'm not saying this isn't true. I'm just laying this out here. It's the State Superintendents Association that is against it. The State Superintendent Association is against it. So now these legislators are worried about having to talk to their their schools superintendents in their districts and fight with them. So not only fighting teachers, they're now fighting the leaders of those school districts at the same time. And I'll go just a step further before you say anything. Look at what State Superintendent Mackey said yesterday or last week about schools. Oh, this whole thing where we're calling them failing, that's just a way to slander the high poverty school districts and smear them and things like this. Like we're coming up with all sorts of excuses for failure. And now you have the leader of the state school system saying, if we don't call them failing, they're not failing. And it's just so dumb.
Oh, okay.
If
Yeah, I know.
anything,
Nice word game you're trying to play there.
yeah, if anything, what we should do is broaden the example of what a failing school is. Because we hear all this stuff. This school has 93% graduation rate. Yep, and 30% of the kids can read. So you want that, and that's a success or something. And I cannot sit back and listen to this stuff because the state superintendents are advocating for one thing. It's not students. It's the status quo. That's what they're advocating. This is
And
a
teachers.
game.
I mean, they're trying to protect their teachers. They that's what they see it as.
Maybe so. But in a broader sense, they're trying to protect the status quo. That's all they care about. But the status quo sucks. I mean, that's really it. And I
Which
think
is usually
they know,
something we can all agree on, right? That the
right.
schools are failing in Alabama.
But they always blame it on different things. They say it's about funding, and this takes funding away, and all these other things. But the fight for the status quo, in my opinion, is fighting for failure. I mean, you're just trying to protect what you have. And they need to know that the wave is pushing against them. They can build the berm up all they want. Eventually, it will erode. They will lose this battle on school choice. It will happen at some point in time. The question is, are we a year away, 5 years away, 10 years away? Everyone else in the country is doing it. And I read something yesterday. Maxwell Air Force Base, they were having a problem because the schools are so bad that surround it, that when people moved to that duty station, they were leaving their kids at the previous duty station because the school sucks so bad.
Wow.
That's just an amazing piece of information.
It's insane.
That should be an embarrassment, and it's a black eye to the state when you're recruiting things like Space Command and things like that. When you have school systems that are failures like that, and you look back at this and you say to yourself, well, what are we doing to make it better? We're fighting for the maintaining of the status quo. That's what we're doing. There's not an amount of money you could dump into these schools and say they're going to get much better. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not blaming the schools. It's a parenting issue as well. I just want parents to have a say. And we're basically telling the parents, sorry, based on where you live is where you're going to go, and that's just what you're going to have to deal with. Oh, and if you move and you've put yourself in a better school district, there's a chance, at least in Huntsville, that the federal government will come and redraw you back into whatever school district you left. And it's happened. It's happened. It's an absolute mess. So the state of school choice in Alabama is bullshit, is what I would say it is. So that's where we are right now with all of this. Yaffe, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I just want to say what really frustrates me, and I think is at the core of a lot of this, is the lack of real leadership. It starts in the governor's office with Kay Ivey. She's not being a true leader on this. If she were, it would build some momentum, but she's not. But also leadership in the Senate and in the House. There's got to be real leadership that pushes this beyond a couple of conservative legislators pushing a bill. They push it, they show a backbone, but then you'll have the leadership in the House or the Senate, and they're like, oh, no, we're too afraid. We need that opposite approach from the leadership. We need them on board to show a backbone and actually push us in the right direction, because if they don't do it now, they're going to look like fools, because eventually it's coming, like you said.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Kay Ivey's got a lead, and she doesn't. She doesn't lead.
I agree.
I mean, Kay Ivey does not lead. So we shouldn't even expect that to be a thing. But you're exactly right about that. So I gave you my word for what the state of school choice is in Alabama. What's yours?
I would just say it's muddled right now. It's muddle's the best word. They're trying, like you said, to muddy the waters, to confuse everyone, so it basically doesn't happen.
Yaffe from the Yaffe program on WVNN. Thank you very much for being here. Yellowhammer Now. We try to do them almost every day, Monday through Friday. Come on back tomorrow for another one. See you soon.